I'm Charles Gibson from ABC News from St. Louis. Good night.
Well, a couple of light moments there at the end. As the president and Senator Kerry were shaking hands, they caused Charlie Gibson, who was signing off the event, to pause for a couple of times, partly to recognize them, I suppose, but also because they got in the way of his prompter. He had his final closing comments were on teleprompter, not visible when the president and the senator were standing together in the middle of the stage. This debate was in a different format, but I think that people who watched the first debate would see a lot of similarities. The issues were, except for the addition of a number of domestic issues, much the same. Tremendous emphasis on Iraq, tremendous emphasis on the war on terror. And Senator Kerry, as he was in the first debate, was lawyerly. He showed the skills he's acquired in 20 years in the Senate, command of a number of policy issues and questions, command of detail. The president was, I think most people would recognize, more enthusiastic and vigorous in his remarks, particularly in the opening going, and he was again dogged, one might say, determined, certain of certain key points, which he reiterated. The question is, of course, whether anything about this debate would be sufficient to change the shape of the race, a race in which the president had appeared to go into a lead of some standing outside the margin of error in certain polls, a race which over the past week, as these three debates have unfolded, the two presidential, the one vice presidential, has clearly tightened, with some polls now showing it even, and one poll this week even showed Senator Kerry, who had of course been trailing, ahead. So that is the shape of the situation as you see the families and others and well-wishers gather on the stage. Senator Kerry's daughter there embracing him. This is the next to last. There will be one more next week. That will be focused on domestic issues. The president seemed confident and comfortable on domestic issues, although his administration has been marked most of all by his performance on foreign policy questions. Our colleague Chris Wallace is in the hall. Oftentimes these debates feel and seem different inside the hall than they do on television, although television, of course, is the way most Americans experience them. Chris, any thoughts, insights about how it seemed to you there in the room?
Well, Britt, the overwhelming reaction I had, the headline I thought tonight, and I suspect it isn't any different on TV than it was here in the hall, is that George W. Bush came to play, that the man who seemed oftentimes to have trouble filling out his answers or to stammer or stutter, did, a very vigorous job tonight, certainly held Kerry even at the very least. And I guess my real reaction is what a terrific debate it was, that in the end you saw two very different men with two very different views of foreign policy, their views of the U.S. role in the world and how we should go about projecting power, two very different views about the role of government, the role of taxes, how the government should relate to business and to the average citizen. And boy, if you watched that 90 minutes and didn't have a choice, I don't see how anybody could be uncommitted. These are two very different candidates with two very different world views, and I think they give the American voter quite a dramatic choice.
What was your sense, Chris, of the questioners? They were supposed to be, what, possibly leaning toward one candidate or the other, but undecided. Did they strike you by and large in that way?
Well, I have to say I thought the questions, and again, I certainly wasn't keeping track of it. I was listening more to the answers than the questions, but I thought they were pretty good, pretty tough, pretty equal opportunity. I think there were some pointed questions to Senator Kerry. The very first one about the fact that is he too wishy-washy, but then there were some tough questions to the president about the deficit and the environment and other issues as well. So I thought really, to coin a phrase, fair and balanced in terms of the questioning. And the main thing was I didn't see any play acting. It seemed to me very much that they were questions that were designed to elicit information, not to make points, and that the real stars of this debate tonight, as they should be, were the two candidates.
Yeah, in past debates, there's been a certain level in some of the questioners, anyway, of what seemed like posturing. That didn't seem to be present here, did it?
No, and I give credit to Charlie Gibson. He got questions, two questions from each of these 140 people. So I guess doing my math, that's 280 questions. He chose which were going to be asked, and they did seem to be questions designed to elicit information, not to make statements or prove points.
Yeah, Charlie, of course, a colleague of both yours and mine in our days at ABC News, Chris, and a man much liked by his colleagues. I thought Charlie did a good job tonight. It isn't always easy to be the person at the controls of the time and so forth, and I thought he was effective and unobtrusive, which knowing Charlie, that's exactly how he would have wanted to be. Let me ask my colleagues here with me their sense about this debate and how it came out. First to you, Bill Kristol.
Talking to people in the White House in the Bush campaign, they very much wanted to make the case tonight that John Kerry was a liberal. I think they thought that the flip-flop charge had done some damage, but had kind of outlived its usefulness, and now they had to say that he was a tax hiker, soft on defense, and a cultural liberal. And you could see President Bush trying to make that case. I thought he did pretty effectively on some issues on abortion. He, I think, told a lot of viewers what they probably didn't know, that John Kerry voted against banning partial birth abortion, was against parental notification. But in general, I would say on taxes, Kerry moved pretty adroitly to try to present himself as a guarantor of a tax cut to the middle class. No
well, he got a question to which there was to be no unequivocal answer, no equivocal answer.
Right.
And he gave an unequivocal answer.
And he did give an unequivocal answer, which I think was politically smart. Who knows if it will be true if he's president for 4 years. And I think on defense and the war on terror, Kerry went out of his way to say, I'm going to be as tough as President Bush. I'm going to hunt down those terrorists. And I don't think the president was as effective as he might have been in reminding people about Senator Kerry's record in the Senate on defense and national security. I don't think we learned from President Bush that Senator Kerry voted against the first Gulf War.
Yeah, that came up in passing, but only in passing. It seems to me that's a point, Mort Kondracki, that the president has had. It's a potentially strong point on the president's case, but one which he hasn't pounded away.
I think the 1991 Gulf War is probably the most potent single item in Kerry's record on foreign policy that there is, and the president didn't use it the first time. Dick Cheney mentioned it only in passing the second time in the second debate, and I didn't really hear the president pounding it home tonight. I mean, this is a case where Saddam Hussein invaded another country. George Bush's father got an alliance together to go after him and kick him out, and John Kerry still voted against the war.
Not only did he have an alliance, but he had a UN resolution authorizing the use of force. In this case, you remember, different from this time around, on that occasion, you went to the Senate and the Congress after getting a UN resolution, and still, of course, John Kerry and the majority of Democrats in the Senate voted no. That is, a lot of them now, I think, have thought better of that vote, and now praise that alliance, as indeed Senator Kerry has. And the president has left that argument on the table in each of these debates. I think.
Kerry, in every way he possibly could tonight, tried to divert the attack that he was a flip-flopper, tried to make himself out to be a moderate on practically every issue, including abortion and all the others, that there were nuances on this and that. And tried to make himself sound tough on foreign policy, that he would not allow other countries to determine our foreign policy. And I thought he was very effective. I thought that he was also on the attack a lot, and frankly, I thought that the president seemed to be on the defense a lot and trying to explain things and not explaining them all that well.
Fred Barnes.
Here's what I think was important. You know, at some time, I think moving into about the third half hour of this debate, if you cupped your ear, you could hear Republicans all over the country and Bush supporters and the White House staff all giving a great sigh of relief because the president did so much better than he did in the first debate. I mean, he simply was better. He was more lively. He actually had some pretty good answers at times. And while Kerry wasn't quite as good, still good, but not quite as good, and Bush was much better, I think it comes out a tie. But for Bush, that helps Bush. We already know what a great debater Kerry is, and he was good again tonight. But Bush showed that he can play the game as well. You know, you mentioned the Gulf War. He missed a great chance to point out Kerry's vote on the Gulf War when Kerry was praising General Merrill McPeak of the Air Force for directing the air war during the Gulf War. And the president could have stepped out and said, he did do a good job, but that was a war you voted against.
Yeah, and he couldn't have done that job if you voted him in it.
Yeah,
do we have now, I mean, is it now fair to say that in each of these debates, that in terms of marshaling arguments and remembering them and presenting them, that this is something that John Kerry has proved he's very good at, and that doesn't play to the president's strong suit?
No.
But so if the president was better tonight, in what sense was he better?
I thought on certain issues he was better. I thought he was good. You know, it took him a while, but on taxes, he finally got to the question of small businesses who pay the income tax. and make over $200,000, and that will cut jobs.
Let's see if the Republicans felt about it as you suggest. Chris Wallace has Mark Roscoe, the chairman of the President's Re-Election Committee. Chris?
Thanks so much, Britt. We are here with former Governor Mark Roscoe. Let me ask you, and I know you're going to say your guy was great, so I'm not going to ask you about that. Senator Kerry made a big point about the fact that the president, his reaction to all of Senator Kerry's plans about Homeland Security was to say it's going to create a tax gap. He says that the president's more concerned about cutting taxes for the rich than Homeland Security.
Well, I think the logic and common sense, quite frankly, virtually all of John Kerry's plans, as far as they're disclosed, and quite frankly, as far as I understand, they're not altogether disclosed. I've never understood the line and verse of any of his plans. He's had so many different ones in reference to Iraq that it's hard to determine on what day he's going to take what position. And what the president, I think his response was a common sense response that reflected how he did throughout the course of the evening. He was in command of the facts and the stage and the substance and the style of the arguments, and I think he did exceptionally well responding. Look, we have made extraordinary investments. We're doing everything from harbor security to making certain that our rail service is safe and secure, to making certain that we do the things we should with airline
Let me ask you,
travel.
the president has plans. I mean, he has ideas for health care, for retirement accounts. Why did he spend so much more time tonight? And I'm confident if we timed it, we'd see it. So much more time tonight attacking John Kerry's plans than talking about his own plans for the future.
Well, because John Kerry needs to be held accountable, Chris. You know, the bottom line is, my God in heaven, when you sit back and think about it, I don't think that everybody has held him nearly as accountable as they should for all of these different positions. He's gone from voting for the war in very aggressive language, very aggressive, to voting against the appropriations after he said that that would be reprehensible to do, to being an anti-war candidate. You know, you've heard this litany on and on and on and on. And that has something to do with the quality and character of the man who's going to serve as president
All right,
of the United States.
I have one more question I want to ask you. Your name came up in the debate. In fact, John Kerry cited you as a defense for him, saying that even you say that the Patriot Act should be changed.
A perfectly good example of why you ought to be very careful about what John Kerry says, and check it out very, very carefully.
Well, very briefly, are you for changes in
No, the fact of the matter is that came from, I think, a year and a half or 2 years ago, where we were talking about at an Arab American Institute in Michigan whether or not there would ever be changes to the Patriot Act. And in the context of, yes, it would have to be reauthorized, Congress would be looking to see if there were any problems with the act. That's what the nature of the discussion was.
An Instant Truth Squad from Mark Roscoe. Thanks so much for joining us. Britt, back to you.
Chris, thanks to you. Thanks also to Mark Roscoe. We're going to take a brief break. We'll hear reaction from the Kerry camp and much else next. Stay tuned.
What is your plan to repair relations with other countries given the current situation?
Sometimes in this world you make unpopular decisions because you think they're right. We'll continue to reach out. Listen, there's 30 nations involved in Iraq, some 40 nations involved in Afghanistan. People love America. Sometimes they don't like the decisions made by America. But I don't think you want a president who tries to become popular and does the wrong thing.
I went to meet with the members of the Security Council in the week before we voted. I went to New York. I talked to all of them to find out how serious they were about really holding Saddam Hussein accountable. I came away convinced that if we worked at it, if we were ready to work at letting Hans Blix do his job and thoroughly go through the inspections, that if push came to shove, they'd be there with us. But the president just arbitrarily brought the hammer down and said, nope, sorry, time for diplomacy is over, we're going. He rushed to war without a plan to win the peace.
That, of course, a central tenet in the case against George W. Bush from John Kerry, that the president rushed to war. Something we've heard him say many times. Senator Kerry seizing the opportunity there to say it again. Chris Wallace has been joined now by one particularly prominent Democrat, one whose own ambitions at times, it's been thought, might have some effect on her enthusiasm for this candidate. Let's hear what Chris has to ask her.
Thanks so much, Britt, and we're here with New York Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton. Once again, welcome to Fox News.
Thank you very much.
The president made a big deal tonight on John Kerry being a liberal. In fact, he says he has an even more liberal voting record than you. True?
Well, you know, Chris, what was interesting is that the president spent a lot of time trying to label John Kerry, but didn't come up with any real plans about what he would do in the next 4 years. And when given a chance to finally level with the American people and tell us what mistakes he may have made and how he was going to correct them in the future, he once again danced around it. So I think that other than his efforts to try to, evade the questions and to not come up with any kind of real solutions or answers to the issues that the people were asking about, it was, not one of his better performances again.
Now, one of the specifics when he talks about John Kerry being a liberal is he says he's going to create a huge federal bureaucracy on health care. He didn't say it tonight, but he has been known to call it Hillary care.
Is that right, really?
Yes.
Well, I think, whatever you call health care, we need some good ideas about how we're going to help people deal with the rising costs and the increasing number of the uninsured and the extraordinary burden that the rising health care costs are posing to American business. And I didn't hear that from the president, but I did hear it from John Kerry. And the plans that Senator Kerry have put forth, the Kerry plan, is a very solid, sensible, affordable way to deal with these serious problems people face in health care.
Now, before I let you go, I have to ask, how's your husband doing? And do you let him watch these debates, or is that going to hurt his recuperation?
Well, I'll tell you what, he is doing very well. And part of the reason I think he's doing so well is because John Kerry has done so well. The first debate was a slam dunk home run. The second debate tonight,
you're going to turn a health report into another spin?
I think that you asked me because I think I would have worried if John hadn't done so well and that everybody hadn't understood that he had won that first debate. And I think the reports will show he won this one as well.
And very briefly, do you think the president is doing well enough that he'll be back on the campaign trail for John Kerry before Election Day?
That's really up to his doctors. And, he's going to go back in, about 2 weeks and have his regular routine checkup as this kind of recovery period goes after this serious operation. But he's going to do everything he can to help.
And he's on the mend.
He is on the mend. Thank you very much for asking.
Well, no.
I want to assure all Fox viewers that he's on the mend.
We're happy.
I'm glad to hear it.
Senator Clinton, thanks so much. Britt, back to you.
All right, Chris, thank you, and thanks to Senator Clinton as well. Let's get some final thoughts here now before this portion of the programming winds down, starting with Bill Kristol. Bill?
I'm so relieved that President Clinton's on the mend.
I can tell.
It was a
collective sigh of relief here at this
I wish him
table.
well. I want to assure Senator Clinton that I and Fox analysts and Fox viewers wish President Clinton good health and many years of
I think it's fair to say that
happiness.
in news terms, the Clintons have never let us down, have they?
That's right, exactly. We need Bill Clinton out there at the end of this campaign. I think if you think the president was doing okay and didn't need a win in this debate, he did fine. But I think if one thinks that Bush missed an awful lot of opportunities to go after Kerry in the first debate, he had to make some of them up in this debate, I'm not sure that he really succeeded in doing so.
Mort?
I agree, and I think Kerry won this debate as he won the first debate. I don't think I thought that Kerry was much more aggressive, and the president was basically on the defense and didn't have new arguments, wasn't as facile as he should have been. Now, when all the analysis goes on, I think there are going to be a lot of questions raised about what Kerry said. The idea that he's for tort reform, please. He is a follower of the trial lawyer lobby all the way down the line. The idea that General Shinseki was fired, that's wrong, and there were other things that were wrong in what Kerry said.
Fred, last word.
I hope some White House aide will tell the president that it's the internet, not the internet.
Yeah, what else?
I think he, but look, I thought he was good on a number of questions, particularly the one you just showed a bite from, where saying, I'm not doing these things just so I'll be popular in Europe, suggesting that Kerry would do that. So
did he win?
He at least tied, but the main thing is he was so much better, and that will encourage Republicans.
That's it for our part of the coverage. A programming note on Sunday morning. Join my colleague Chris Wallace for Fox News Sunday on your local Fox station. His guests include National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice and Senator John Edwards. And stay tuned for a special edition of On the Record with Greta Van Susteren right here. And now the debate coverage continues with Hannity and Combs. I'm Britt Hume in Washington. For all of us here, good night and thank you.